Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time talking episode 23 of season 1 of The Flash called Fast Enough. And here it is, our season finale, and boy, does this episode not disappoint. It really does provide a nice resolution to everything that's going on, and it sets up season 2 so well that, it's hard not to just be awed by the sheer craziness that has been hinted at for season 2. But anyway, let's just kind of get right into things and start talking about what happened here. And let's start small and kind of work our way up. Now, in this episode, we do get to see Ronnie and Caitlin get married, which had been teased before, but does seem to come a little bit out of left field. And I mean, it's not a bad scene at all, but the problem is that Ronnie is really not a super well fleshed out character. You know, we had the handful, two episodes that really focused in on Firestorm, and for him as a character, that was about it. So while Caitlin obviously knows him well, we don't. So it really feels weird that she's marrying this guy that we, the viewers, barely know. But you know, Caitlin's earned her moment of happiness this season, and you know it's hard not to love that "Don't Dream It's Over" playing in the background as they get married by Martin Stein, who just so happens to be a fully ordained rabbi. That was pretty hilarious. So yeah, really not a huge amount to say about Ronnie, and apart from getting married this episode, Caitlin didn't really have much going on. The real thing, though, with her was when Barry is traveling into the Speed Force, we get to see that really brief glimpse of Caitlin and basically fully transformed into her comic book counterpart, which is of course Killer Frost. If you look closely, you can see that she's got sort of the glowy blue eyes, crazy white gloves, and was it called like a bustier that's all blue? I mean, more than a few jokes about Elsa from Frozen have been made, but still, it's a fairly realistic interpretation of Killer Frost. Sans the icy white skin, which would look kind of ridiculous on a real person and be a real hassle for the actress. So I can understand why they would drop that. And it has been confirmed by Danielle Panabaker that she is going to be playing Killer Frost in the next season. And we'll talk a little bit about some things that have been confirmed as to be coming down the line as we go along. But the thing is, though, we're really starting to get into things like the multiverse and alternate timelines and such here. So one thing that's really been jumping into my mind, and I know I'm not the only one online who's been thinking this, is that we might get Killer Frost, but we might also get to keep Caitlin. The idea of perhaps Killer Frost would be Caitlin from an alternate reality who somehow ends up in the CW universe. And I think that would be a really nice way of doing that. Just looking at her, it would have to be something really hellishly big that would turn our Caitlin into a villain, somebody who would really just want to go out there and try and kill Barry. I mean, it would have to be something enormous, and it would also have to be something that I think would have to take the entirety of a season to really feel like a good and proper journey. On the other hand, if you just want to hey, Barry has to fight evil Caitlin from an alternate reality, well, bam, there you go. If you go with the idea that Caitlin was somehow transformed into metahuman and God only knows what happened to her then, well, okay, that's a lot easier to buy. And then that would leave the door open to Caitlin meeting Killer Frost and having the glimpse of but for the grace of God, there go I. That would be a real blow to her. And well, what in the world would Ronnie think? And of course, Killer Frost is basically considered one of the major enemies of Firestorm. How crazy would it be for Ronnie to have this alternate reality version of his wife trying to kill him? I mean, wow, that's some awesome craziness. And let's talk about it since we brought it up. While Barry was running around in the Speed Force, we also got to see some version of him where Barry was in jail. Is that the future? Is that an alternate reality? I mean, who knows? We got to see the Flash Museum. the Flash Museum, which is obviously something that's going to be in Central City in the future. And of course, the real jackpot is Jay Garrick, the original Flash's helmet, comes popping out of the wormhole. And it's just like, I love how Wells goes, "Oh, that's my cue to leave." And it's the big question, does he realize that does he understand what's starting to happen, or does he actually recognize that helmet as having belonged to Jay Garrick? I mean, people have been wondering, like, well, what are we going to get to see Jay Garrick? Well, if you go with the idea of Jay Garrick being from an alternate reality, that makes perfect sense. And it even goes back to that really famous storyline from the comics, The Flash of Two Worlds, where it really was Barry originally finds an alternate reality where there's a guy an awful lot like him called the Flash, but the Flash is this man named Jay Garrick. So yeah. Anyway, so that kind of covers Ronnie and Caitlin. Now Cisco, he had some much better stuff going on this episode. I mean, this episode we find out that Cisco is a freaking metahuman, and when they said that, I'm like, why did that not cross my mind before? It makes perfect sense. That's how Cisco remembered the alternate reality. And in the comics, the more recent interpretations of Vibe have even kind of had him as like some powers that deal with alternate realities of the vibrations between dimensions and all of this other stuff. So again, it makes perfect sense, but the writers did a really nice job of kind of throwing us off track. A lot of people are thinking, well, Cisco will one day become Vibe, but most people, including myself, were thinking he might use some of Pied Piper's technology to become Vibe, be a technology-based hero rather than a metahuman. So setting him up in conflict with Pied Piper was really a nice way of taking care of that. And of course, having Pied Piper escape also means I didn't have to bring him back for the previous episodes. But anyway, let's see. And I absolutely love that in his interactions with Wells this episode, where he's like, "Wait, how'd you get your costume into that ring? Wait, I don't want to know." Well, okay, yeah, I do a little bit. And then he explains, like, "Look, I saw that alternate reality where you killed me." And Wells is like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, not for killing you. I'm sure I had a good reason for that." I'm like, oh man, you are such a freaking dick. I mean, but then he says to Cisco, you're going to go on this amazing journey of honor and all of this other stuff, and he generally seems to have a reverence for Cisco there. He knows what Cisco could become, and he says, like, it comes from love. And this is a really twisted thing about Eobard Thawne, is that he's genuine in this. He's not like Snart. He doesn't backstab Barry. I mean, he is completely sincere with this deal he offers Barry. But that he can both love these people and be perfectly willing to kill them the second it would benefit him more for them to be dead than for him to be alive. And he even says this to Barry, that he both loves and hates Barry. And the really twisted thing about it all is that it isn't even Barry that he really hates. It's this potential future Barry who, with all the dicking that Wells has done with the timeline, has almost certainly been erased. So really, Wells is basically won. He's triumphed over the Flash, who caused him to lose whatever it is they lost. I love that he even refuses to say what happened. I mean, they're obviously setting that up for season 2 because Tom Cavanaugh has confirmed, I am totally coming back in season 2. And thank God for that, because I love Tom Cavanaugh as Harrison Wells, Reverse Flash, Eobard Thawne, whatever you want to call him. I mean, I'd heard this guy's name before, but I really wasn't super familiar with his work. But oh man, did CW hit a jackpot whenever they agreed to get this guy on the show, because he just makes this season. He and Grant Gustin. I mean, everybody else did a great job too, but it's really him and Grant Gustin that made this season shine. But anyway. Getting back to Cisco though, he Wells is obviously kind of referring to, as I said, to will Cisco almost certainly becoming a member of the Justice League someday. But this. And that's cool. I mean, Cisco, the ultimate superhero fanboy, gets to become a superhero himself. And judging by the way he said, the way Wells is talking, it really honestly sounds like Cisco becomes somebody who's very well remembered in the future. Somebody who really did carve out a genuinely heroic name for himself. But let's take all of that with a grain of salt. Remember, in alternate reality, when Reverse Flash killed Cisco, he said, "To me, you've been dead for centuries." And in this episode, Wells said, "Oh, I'm from like 134 years in the future." Okay, 134 years is 1 century and some change. It is not centuries. Sorry, there's something on my computer. Now, this could just be a little bit of inconsistency on the part of the writers. Somebody kind of goofed. It should have been decades rather than centuries. But still, it's been portrayed in the comics that Eobard Thawne was from the 25th century, which is kind of what most of what he's been saying has been consistent with. Him spitting out, "I'm really from only 134 years in the future," just doesn't really make sense. And then there's the whole thing of he's like that episode where Barry accidentally time travels back in time, and Wells is like, no, don't dick with history. You could screw up all God only knows what, and the repercussions of altering history will come around and bite you in the ass horribly. And this is from the guy who has come back in time, God knows how many years, has dicked with history majorly, and was kind of planning to who had tried to kill Green Arrow, who we know would have been willing to kill yet another member of the Justice League, who also wants to murder all these other important people like Martin Stein, Ronnie Raymond, Caitlin Snow, stuff that would cause radical, majorly huge alterations in the timeline. And does he not think this isn't going to come biting him in the ass, even though this was exactly what he was preaching against Barry to not do? I mean, yes, he didn't want Barry to screw up his plans, but we did see that, he was right. If you screw with history, history will screw with you right back. And this just kind of feeds into the thing that I think a lot of people have completely missed about Eobard Thawne, and that is that he is out of his goddamn mind. Yes, he's super smart. Yes, he's a master planner. But he's also out of his goddamn mind. I mean, I really don't think I can put it any plainer than that. And I think I've explained exactly why. The Barry he wants to get revenge on, he's already erased from history. If he ever wants to be able to go back to the 25th century or wherever the hell it is he is from, actually, he needs history to play out pretty much as close as it possibly can to what he is familiar with. So going around and radically altering history is screwing himself. And yet he does all this anyway to get revenge on a guy who, in the ultimate irony, has already been erased from history. Again, the guy's out of his damn mind. Let's see. Let's just finish talking about Harrison Wells, or whatever we want to call him. Again, just really so much fun to watch Tom Cavanaugh having a grand old time playing him, and him talking about him name dropping Rip Hunter. Okay, obviously that, and the glimpse of the Legend of Tomorrow team we saw when Barry enters the Speed Force, they're really playing that up, and with good reason. That show looks like it's going to be fantastic. So you have to wonder, well, is Reverse Flash someone else that Rip Hunter has dealt with? The Reverse Flash is the sort of guy who probably would have more than one enemy, and Rip Hunter is somebody who makes perfect sense. Oh man, that would be so cool if we could kind of get Arthur Darvill or Darvill, or however you say his last name, to kind of pop up on the Flash as a guest star. That would be so sweet. It would also be really sweet if he somehow found a way to name drop the Linear Men. Linear Men versus Time Masters. That was some cool stuff in the comics. But anyway, yeah. One thing though that really got me was that when Barry pops out of the time bubble, out of the wormhole, smashes the time bubble, and he immediately seems to forget that, oh yeah, the Reverse Flash is totally awesome at kicking my ass. The only reason we defeated him before is because, well, I mean, okay, Ronnie's there, so Firestorm is totally a possibility. But really, it was basically, at the end of the day, it was really Oliver Queen who kicked Reverse Flash's ass. And I've watched that fight a couple of times. Super speed aside, yeah, Wells gets in a few decent shots, but for the most part, Oliver totally owns him. I mean, he totally kicks his ass. So yeah, without his super speed, Eobard Thawne is really not a terribly dangerous guy, at least in terms of physical combat. Let's see. Yeah, let's talk about Joe. And it really did surprise me that it was Joe who was the first one to step up and say, like, Barry, you should go back and change history. I mean, I absolutely did not expect that at all from Joe. But again, we got another amazing scene between Joe and Barry, just really showing them that, like, and Barry even says, yeah, I lost my mother, but I gained a father. You'll always be my other father to me. I mean, oh, getcha right in the heart. And then it's Iris that's seen with her. They both kind of acknowledge, like, we were raised together as brother and sister, but at this point we can't deny that there's more to our feelings for each other than that. And it's a totally weird situation, but they still care about each other so unbelievably much. And it's Iris who says to him, Barry, you've sacrificed so much. You're always thinking of other people. Now it's time to make a decision for yourself. And it's actually Cisco, of all people, who's the first person to step up and say, like, Barry, this is a terrible idea. You should totally not alter history. And it really gets me that nobody really points out, like, hey, Barry, you do realize that if you're not the Flash, that all the people you saved as the Flash are probably going to die? And then he goes and has that awesome scene with his dad, which, again, it's another, like, oh, right in the heart. I mean, like, oh, John Wesley Shipp, I'm so glad they got you as Barry's dad. And he's the one who just, like, flat out says, like, no, Barry, you're not doing this. And really points out that, yeah, Barry would get his mom back, but the world would lose the Flash. And the Flash has become something enormously good in the world. I mean, he even says that he is in awe of the man that Barry has become. I mean, yeah, he doesn't like being in jail, but, that's a small price to pay, I think, in his mind, for having his son being out there and being able to be this extraordinary person. I mean, Barry was a good guy, a person who did good in the world even before he got powers. And now the Flash is basically a demigod, getting stronger every day. And in terms of his morality, he's really one of the heroes who is the most like, for example, Superman. People who are endowed with astonishing power and who have only ever wanted to use that power to do good, to help people, to make the world better. I mean, a lot of the other heroes were kind of in awe of Superman. I mean, he's the hero of the other superheroes. And there's this really interesting story from the comics where in the early days of the Justice League, Superman was like, oh man, other people with superpowers, a lot of them are really powerful. Finally, I'm going to have some people who are kind of like me to hang out with, who will kind of get where I'm coming from. And then Barry Allen, as the Flash, comes up to him like, Superman, dude, can I have your autograph? I mean, they all ended up becoming good buds eventually, except for Batman, who was always kind of a dick. But Batman was like Batman in the Justice League is like the guy who's your friend, but who you like. Yeah, he's my friend, but man, he's such an asshole. I mean that's Batman. But anyway, yeah. Oh, by the way, and it is established in the comics that the Flash is indeed faster than Superman. But anyway, that was really what was great about those two, about Superman and about Clark Kent and Barry, is that again, they were just simple guys who were genuinely good men. Hal Jordan, he had his anger issues. He had a serious problem with commitment and womanizing. Batman has a laundry list of psychological issues. And it goes on and on. But these were the two real down-to-earth guys that even the other heroes looked to as inspirations. Not really for their power, but for who they were as people. For their morality, for the example that they set in what it means to be a hero in terms of, well, as corny as it might be to say, good conduct. And in our cynical world, it's easy to poo-poo that sort of thing. I've seen so many people say, like, man, Superman's boring. Superman sucks. He doesn't do anything bad. As if Superman was really cool, he'd tear Lex Luthor's freaking head off. And people like that just don't get it. The thing that Superman and the Flash have in common, it's not about their powers. And it's not, and people even really miss what their greatest power is. And it isn't super speed or strength or shooting lasers from their eyes or whatever. It is wisdom. It is wisdom to have such extraordinary power at their command and to use it wisely. To use it with kindness and compassion and altruism. Those are the things that really make them heroes. And those are the things that make them stand out and above all these other godlike beings that roam the earth. Again, and the thing about all of that is truly extraordinary, is that kindness and compassion and altruism and a desire to do good in the world. You don't get that from being born an alien or getting crazy chemicals splashed on you or being bitten by a radioactive spider or anything. The capacity for all of that is within each and every one of us. And yet, when we see people like that in real life who are genuinely like that, we are awed by it. We look at it as some miracle come down from the heavens. Might as well have been bitten by a radioactive spider. And yet we all know that this is within us as well. It is just we choose not to let that out, not to cultivate it to the degree that we could. And isn't that amazing? Isn't it amazing to think that the things that are greatest about Superman or the Flash or Captain America or Spider-Man or any other real hero that you want to name from comics, those things are already within us. We don't need the impossible to be heroes. We only need to be our best selves. But anyway, enough philosophy. Let's kind of get right into things a little bit more. La-di-da-di-da. What else do I need to talk about still? Nothing particularly huge to say about Martin Stein, although I really did enjoy that scene with Eddie. I'm glad they put that in there. It's a nice way of teeing him up as a more fleshed out character for when he's on Legends of Tomorrow. And it kind of shows him, serving there as that, not just the science guy, but the sort of the older guy who doles out the wisdom. And he is presented as being that, but he's also presented, admittedly, as kind of a cantankerous fellow with a bit of an ego, which is a nice contrast. But I really did love that scene with him with Eddie, where he says to Eddie, like, "You're the only one of us who really has a choice in our futures." which doesn't really make sense. I mean, if we really wanted to, Martin Stein can jump off a bridge tomorrow. That would certainly be a choice he could make, but that's very Sartre kind of situation there. Ooh, French philosophy. Okay, dang, I'm having a hard time staying away from the philosophy today. But anyway, it was an important scene because that sets up everything that happens with Eddie here at the end, where he chooses to kill himself, and thus Eddie is ultimately the one who defeats the Reverse Flash. I mean, granted, he probably could have just gone down to the vasectomy clinic and gotten that taken care of, and still been alive as soon as he was. Yeah, I even said that. Like, man, if knowing what he knows, it's amazing he didn't say like, man, screw this Reverse Flash fight. Like tomorrow, I'm going over there and getting the boys clipped. If I get married, we'll freaking adopt. But that's no fun on TV. But he dies knowing that he did one thing great. He rid the world of a terrible and evil person. He made the life of the people that he cared about better. And really, that self-sacrifice, that was something that was really unique to him. I mean, Barry has certainly sacrificed a lot being the Flash, but Eddie was the one who made the ultimate choice, the ultimate sacrifice. And it really did lead to that really great scene at the end with Reverse Flash saying to Barry, you've been in my control for so long. What are you going to do without me? Well, I have the feeling that Barry's going to be just fine, Mr. Thawne. So, F off. And let's see, what else is there? Oh yeah, I did see some people, more than a few people online, who were going like, "Oh, this time travel stuff doesn't make any sense." It's like, I mean, sorry, have you never watched a time travel movie or TV show before? Time travel never makes any damn sense. Doctor Who doesn't make any damn sense. I mean, seriously, have you ever tried to look and try anything where anybody tried to figure out the continuity of Doctor Who? I mean, they even ultimately on the show even basically had said like the Doctor like, "Oh yeah, I change history all the time." That whole fixed points in history thing. I mean, that's basically how they kind of had to like explain away why the hell Doctor Who continuity makes no sense. And then they're like, think Back to the Future. Back to the Future doesn't make any goddamn sense. Marty totally changed, basically the way his parents lived the next 30 years of their lives, and yet he, his brother, and his sister were all born. I mean, it makes no damn sense. So, yeah. But going back to Barry being the Speed Force, though, I really did like that scene. With the way they presented time there, the past, the present, the future, the possible realities. It actually reminds me a little bit, if I can once again dip back into philosophy, of sort of ideas in Buddhist philosophy, which I was actually reading some stuff about last week where they talked about it. And basically, in Buddhist philosophy, they kind of believe that all moments in time exist simultaneously. And the past, the present, and the future. And the way what I was reading kind of presented it was, think of it as being like a diamond. If you ever looked inside of a big, well-cut piece of diamond or a piece of glass, you can see all these countless facets touching each other in this extraordinarily interconnected matrix. And I kind of think that's sort of like what the Speed Force is sort of meant to be like. But again, that's just kind of my personal interpretation of things. And I've been rambling on for about half an hour, so this seems like a good place to call it. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. I will absolutely be back with these reviews for Season 4 of Arrow, Season 2 of The Flash, and Legends of Tomorrow. And oh yeah, we got a cameo by Hawk Girl in this episode. And Captain Cold. So, yeah, guys, it's been fun. This season has been a blast. When this show started, we were promised the best live-action superhero show ever. And God almighty, did it live up to that. It did, and we should all be so grateful. This is a golden age, people. Enjoy it while you can. So, until next time, take care and have a good one.